They thought he was just a shadow, a wild thing, meant to roam alone. But that night under the pine-dark sky of Kalispell, something changed. A border collie puppy left behind at a campout, tangled and trembling, should have been forgotten. But the forest was listening, and a lone wolf named Blaze was watching. No one told him to care. No one expected him to turn back. But sometimes, the quietest hearts do the loudest things. And sometimes, the wildest creature becomes the only one who saves you. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from, and if this story touches your heart, please subscribe for more. Flathead National Forest, Kalispell, Montana. Early autumn air, crisp skies clear with a thin curtain of gold sunlight. They said wolves didn't feel things like humans did, that they moved through the woods with instincts alone, no memories, no mourning. But that was before they knew Blaze. Blaze wasn't the biggest wolf that roamed Flathead, nor the fiercest. But he had a sharp, pale scar over his right eye, and eyes like weathered copper that seemed to hold stories too heavy for a creature that lived without words. His fur, once thick charcoal gray, was thinning around the neck and muzzle. He had lived alone for 3 winters since the fire, a fire that had taken his pack and nearly his life. Now Blaze belonged to no one, and to Blaze, no one belonged to him. He moved through the underbrush like a shadow, silent and deliberate. The morning air held the scent of pine bark, cold dew, and something unnatural. Blaze paused, muzzle lifted slightly. There it was, the scent of grease smoke and something sweeter. Meat. Cooked meat. He followed it. His paws, padded and worn, made no sound over the fallen needles and damp soil. At the edge of a clearing, he stopped. The grass was trampled in wide, chaotic circles. Folded lawn chairs, a crushed soda can, paper plates fluttering lazily in the breeze. The fire pit was still warm, and the smell of charcoal mingled with the lingering scent of hot dogs and burgers. Blaze knew this pattern. Humans. Loud, careless, and always leaving behind strange things. Sometimes the leftovers were worth the risk. He stepped forward, nose low, scanning for danger. No scent of dogs, no engine oil, no heavy boot prints fresh enough to worry about. It seemed they had left during the night. Blaze found a half-eaten bun near the fire pit. He sniffed it, tore off the crust with cautious teeth, and moved on to a few scattered chips. It wasn't enough to fill his belly, but it took the edge off the hunger. He was about to retreat back into the tree line when he heard it. A sound that cut cleanly through the rustle of leaves and creak of branches. A whimper. High. Trembling. Repeating. He froze. It came again from the far side of the clearing where the forest thickened and the sunlight barely touched. Blaze's ears turned forward, then back, uncertain. The sound was weak, like a creature already halfway into the grip of death. Instinct told him to leave it. A dying animal would only attract trouble. But something deeper, older, kept him rooted. He remembered. A winter night and a whimper like that. Only smaller. Younger. It was his youngest sibling, the runt of their litter. Blaze had stayed beside him that whole night, pressed close, warding off the cold. The pup hadn't made it, but that sound had never left Blaze. He moved toward it. Cautiously, Blaze slid between clusters of fern and underbrush paws, silent, body low. The scent grew stronger. Dog. Young. Male. Blaze rounded a fallen log and saw him a border collie pup, barely 4 months old, tangled in an abandoned fishing net, the kind kids play with when they go exploring near lakes. His fur, black and white, once plush, was now matted and streaked with dirt. He was thin, shivering, and too weak to even bark. His right paw was twisted painfully in the mesh. His brown eyes met Blaze's wide with fear, but not without hope. Blaze stood still. He could leave. Let nature take its course. This was none of his business. The pup wasn't from his world, but neither was Blaze anymore. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate, and let out a low huff, not a growl, not a warning. The pup didn't flinch. His tail moved slightly, a flicker of trust. Blaze moved beside him, inspected the net. It was knotted badly, but not impossible. He used his front paw to press down the mesh, then bit through one of the thinner ropes. The pup yelped in pain, but didn't resist. Another strand, then another. Blaze worked until the paw came free. The pup collapsed into the dirt chest, rising fast, tail thumping weakly. Blaze stared. The smell of blood and fear was heavy. The pup nudged forward and licked Blaze's paw, once a hesitant gesture. Blaze recoiled, slightly caught off guard. No one had touched him in 3 years, not even the wind. He turned, scanning the tree line. No humans, no food, no shelter nearby. If he left the pup now, the cold would finish what the net had started. Blaze sat down beside the pup, not touching, not close, just near enough. A silent watcher. The pup he'd need a name eventually, but not yet curled toward Blaze's side, shivering. Blaze didn't move away. The light faded fast in Montana this time of year. The wind picked up and dry leaves whispered overhead. Blaze lifted his nose to the air. Nothing immediate, no danger. But dawn would bring coyotes, maybe even cougars, sniffing out the weak. This place wasn't safe. Blaze didn't sleep that night. He stayed curled in the half-circle of brush, ears perked, heart divided. When the morning sun filtered through the branches, pale and gold, he stood. The pup was still alive, breathing, but barely. Blaze looked toward the ridges to the east. Kalispell, civilization, danger. But also, the only hope this pup had. He gave one short huff and stepped forward. The pup stumbled to his feet and followed. The night in Flathead Forest arrived slowly, like a quiet hush settling over the trees. The sun dipped beneath the snow-dusted peaks beyond Kalispell, leaving a fading smear of amber light that gave way to dusk. Blaze led the pup with deliberate carekeeping to narrow game trails where the leaves muffled their movement and the wind masked their scent. He had no plan, not really. Only a growing awareness that the pup, still nameless to him in his mind, wouldn't survive another night alone. His breathing was shallow, his steps clumsy. Blaze would pause every dozen strides to let him rest, ears twitching at every distant owl call or snapping branch. Hunger tugged at Blaze's belly, but not enough to turn back. After nearly an hour, the trail dipped toward a mossy ravine, where a thin stream curled like silver thread through the brush. Blaze had used this stream in summers past, when prey was sparse and the days grew hot. It was clear, cold, and shallow. He stepped into it without hesitation and bent to drink. The pup followed, stumbling once, then lowering his head to lap the water greedily. When he lifted his head again, his eyes met Blaze's with gratitude and exhaustion. Blaze didn't react, but something in him had shifted. The pup wasn't just a burden anymore. He was something Blaze had chosen to protect. That meant something now. Blaze crossed the stream and, without warning, darted into the undergrowth. Leaves rustled, a blur of gray fur and muscle as he surged forward. Seconds later, a sharp squeal echoed a rabbit. Blaze returned, dragging it by the neck, limp but fresh. He dropped it beside the pup. The little one just stared, unsure what to do. Blaze tore it open with practiced ease, tearing a back leg free, then pushed the rest toward the pup. Blood darkened the leaves. The pup hesitated only briefly, then began to eat. Blaze watched him, then turned away and listened to the forest. For a while there was only silence and the crunch of bone. Later, when the wind grew sharper and the trees swayed like slow dancers, Blaze found a place beneath the wide arms of a ponderosa pine. Its trunk was hollow on one side from a long-forgotten lightning strike, and its thick canopy blocked the worst of the cold. Blaze curled at the base, the pup, stronger now, belly full, tucked himself beside the wolf's side. Blaze didn't move, not even when the pup rested his head against Blaze's ribs. He slept, lightly the way a wolf always does. But this time, not alone. The moon rose high and bright. Thin clouds drifted across its face like ghosts. In the distance, an owl called once, then again. Somewhere further off, a coyote barked. Blaze opened his eyes briefly, then closed them. The pup twitched in his sleep, but didn't wake. When morning came, the cold hadn't lifted. Frost clung to the edges of the grass. Blaze stood slowly stretching each leg, then nudged the pup gently with his muzzle. The pup stirred, whined softly, but managed to rise. They set off again. As they walked, Blaze noticed the pup's limping had grown worse. The paw that had been caught in the net was swelling. The skin around it was pink and raw. Infection. Blaze didn't know the word, but he knew the smell. He had seen it before, once in a wounded buck he had tried to hunt. The smell of rot and death. The pup couldn't go much farther like this. It was time. They would go to the edge of Kalispell. To Blaze, the town was a place of noise, flashing lights, bitter smells of asphalt and iron. But maybe there was someone there, some human different from the rest. One who wouldn't chase the pup away with sticks and shouts. Blaze had to believe that. As they neared the thinning edge of the forest, Blaze paused beside a split rock that overlooked the valley. The sun, now risen, lit the rooftops of Kalispell below in gold. Smoke drifted up from chimneys. Faint sounds of human life floated toward them. Cars, dogs, barking a distant school bell. And then a scent. New. Blaze turned sharply and saw movement among the trees below. A girl, maybe 11, with curly blonde hair, tied in a ponytail, wearing a navy blue jacket and jeans patched at the knees. She walked with quiet steps, a small canvas satchel slung across her shoulder. A notepad peeked out. Her name was Willa Dunn. She had freckles like raindrops and a curious gaze that didn't flinch easily. Willa often came here in the mornings to sketch birds. She liked the quiet and the way the forest made her heart slow down. She hadn't seen Blaze yet, but she heard the rustle, looked up and locked eyes with him. Willa didn't scream. She didn't run. Instead, she reached into her satchel and slowly, gently pulled out a strip of dried meat from a crinkled plastic bag. Blaze didn't move, but the pup, limping, whimpering, stepped toward her, drawn by the smell. Willa knelt. Her hands were steady. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft. "Hey there, buddy. You look like you've had a rough time." The pup collapsed at her feet. Blaze watched. He waited. If she screamed, if she struck, he would not forgive. But Willa only stroked the pup's side, gently checking the swollen paw. She looked up at Blaze again. "Is he yours?" It wasn't a joke. She meant it. Blaze didn't answer. He couldn't. But he didn't leave. Willa stood up, lifting the pup carefully in her arms. Her small frame shook under his weight, but she held tight. "I'll help him," she said quietly. "You did good." And then she walked away, back toward the neighborhood on the edge of Kalispell. Blaze stayed where he was, tail low, chest tight. He had done what he could, but he wasn't done yet. The morning light spread across Kalispell, like spilled milk, soft and silver at the edges, warming the rooftops and coaxing steam from the damp soil. Blaze had followed the scent trail. Willa left, faint but enough. He had kept a distance, his body low behind hedges, his copper eyes fixed on the girl's retreating form. Cooper, yes, the name had finally come to him, was cradled in her arms. Each step she took into town pulled the pup further from the wild and closer to something Blaze didn't fully trust. But he didn't leave. By late morning, Blaze's trail curved around a sagging fence choked with ivy. This part of town, older, quieter, had been built in the 1950s and barely touched since. There, nestled among lilac bushes and overgrown rose vines, stood a modest wooden house with a faded green porch and a crooked mailbox that read, "Whitmore." The yard was half wild. Daisies and creeping thyme spilled across cracked stones. The smell of bread lingered in the air, warm and yeasty. Somewhere inside, a radio hummed softly, playing something classical, almost like a lullaby. Blaze crouched in the shade of a hedgerow and watched. A woman stepped into view. She was in her early 70s, with short silver hair tucked beneath a broad-brimmed straw hat. Her hands were lined and speckled with age spots, strong but delicate, as she clipped away dead blooms from her garden. Her name was Evelyn Whitmore. She had once taught piano and raised 2 sons who now lived far away. Since her husband's passing 5 years ago, she'd spoken mostly to birds, flowers, and the wind. Blaze tensed. The door creaked open behind her, and Willa emerged, her arms still wrapped around Cooper, now limp but breathing. Evelyn turned, startled, but when she saw the pup, her expression softened instantly. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. Willa explained in quiet, careful words what had happened. The forest, the wolf, the rescue. Evelyn knelt beside Cooper, her hand gently touching his nose. She looked up once, scanning the yard. Blaze didn't move. But Evelyn's eyes lingered on the bushes a moment too long, and a flicker of knowing passed through her expression. She didn't say anything. Instead, she stood and pushed open the creaky screen door. "Bring him in, dear. Let's see what we can do." Inside, Cooper was placed onto a blanket near the fireplace. The house smelled of lavender, old books, and something sweet baking in the oven. Evelyn fetched a basin of warm water, a soft cloth, and a pair of tweezers. She didn't flinch at the ticks buried deep or the dried blood near the paw. While Evelyn worked, Willa sat nearby, sketching the curve of Cooper's ears, her pencil moving with the focus of someone trying to preserve something fragile. Her eyes flicked to the window every few minutes, hoping maybe the shadow of a wolf would still be there. He was. Outside, Blaze remained beneath the hedge. The scent of cinnamon and rosemary drifted to him. He watched Cooper rest in the light of that window, the rise and fall of his chest steadying. And for reasons Blaze couldn't name, he didn't leave. By evening, Evelyn stepped out with a small plate of scrambled eggs and leftover turkey from the night before. She didn't walk far, just to the base of the porch. She placed it down, straightened up, and returned inside. An hour later, it was gone. Blaze didn't linger, but he remembered. That night, Kalispell was quiet. No sirens, no cars, just the murmur of sprinklers and the occasional bark from a backyard down the block. From the upstairs guest room, Willa looked out the window. She saw nothing but the sway of flowers, but she whispered anyway. "Thank you." Blaze, hidden in the alley behind the fence, closed his eyes. Over the next 2 days, a rhythm began to settle. Evelyn fed Cooper small portions, bathed his paw in salt water, and applied balm made from calendula. She grew in her garden. She spoke to him softly, humming old lullabies. Willa visited every morning before school, checking in, always asking if Blaze had come closer. He hadn't, but his presence was constant. He never came near the door, never made a sound. But food placed outside vanished. Tracks, barely impressions, showed up in the dew-dusted soil. And then on the 3rd morning, Blaze saw him, Howard Lyle. He was the neighborhood's problem in khaki. Mid-60s former animal control, and proud of it. Tall, square-jawed, and constantly irritated by things that moved. He had taken up patrolling the street with binoculars since retirement, and didn't like strays. That morning he spotted the paw prints in Evelyn's yard. Fresh. Deep. "Coyotes," he muttered to his equally grumpy terrier, Buck. He knocked on Evelyn's door without waiting for permission. "You been leaving food out, Ev?" Evelyn met his sharp eyes with calm steel. "For a sick dog, a child brought me, yes." Howard squinted. "Not talking about the mutt. Something bigger. Seen tracks. Might be a wolf." Evelyn didn't flinch. "Then it's only hungry." "Dangerous," Howard warned. "You get too friendly with wild things and someone's bound to get bit." She didn't reply. She only closed the door, quietly, firmly. From the fence line, Blaze had watched it all. The man's voice, his posture, the dog's bark. Blaze didn't growl, but he didn't blink either. The garden wasn't safe anymore. That night, Evelyn left a bowl of turkey near the gate, but it stayed untouched. Blaze had vanished into the dark. Inside, Cooper stirred in his sleep, and Willa, lying on the floor next to him, whispered, "Come back." The lavender bloomed late that year in Kalispell, as if hesitant to rise after a harsh spring. But when the first blossoms came, their scent crept into the corners of Evelyn Whitmore's house, like memory, soft floral, and a little sad. They grew wild along her garden path, circling the edges like purple fog, brushing against the worn bricks and cracked flower pots that hadn't moved in decades. Inside, the warmth of the fireplace mingled with the scent of freshly cooked chicken and brown rice. Cooper, now cleaner and stronger, lay curled on a patchwork blanket near the hearth. His coat had regained its texture, black and white fur fluffed slightly despite the healing bald patches. His injured paw was still bandaged, but the infection was fading, the swelling less angry than days before. Evelyn sat in her armchair, with a steaming mug of chamomile tea, watching him sleep. Her face, lined kind and framed by short silver curls, was both peaceful and deeply thoughtful. She'd always had a way with quiet animals, perhaps because she herself had grown quieter with time. The day before, she had seen the wolf again. He had returned just after dusk, emerging from the lilac hedge, with the caution of something that had survived too much. He had not approached the porch directly, but he had not run when she opened the door either. Evelyn had placed a shallow dish of water and a few strips of smoked venison near the steps. She had backed away slowly, her hands open, her voice low and steady. Blaze had waited until the porch light flickered off and the last trace of her scent had faded. Then he had eaten not with ravenous speed, but with careful acceptance. He left nothing behind but a faint paw print in the dew. This morning, Evelyn repeated the ritual. Water. Meat. Silence. It felt like a ceremony now. Willa arrived just after 8, her backpack slung across one shoulder, her pencil tucked behind one ear. Her cheeks were pink from the bike ride over, and her first question, as always, was simple. "Did he come back?" Evelyn nodded. "He's watching. He's just not sure if he's welcome." Willa crouched beside Cooper, stroking his ears. "He's welcome. He's the reason Cooper's alive." Evelyn agreed but said nothing more. She was thinking again about what came next. She could keep Cooper for now, but her joints were beginning to protest even the simplest tasks. Walking up the stairs, lifting the kettle. The weight of a young dog who would grow fast, too fast for her slow mornings and quiet afternoons. Later that day, after Willa left for school, Evelyn decided to call someone she hadn't spoken to in years. Nora Beckett answered on the second ring. Nora was in her mid-40s, short and practical, with sun-worn skin and a voice that always sounded like she was smiling, even when she wasn't. She ran the local animal rescue Second Chance Hollow just outside town. Evelyn had once donated blankets there during winter storms, but they hadn't spoken since her husband's funeral. Evelyn began, "I've got a pup here. Might be in need of a real home." Nora's response was quick. "You think he'd fit here?" "I don't know," Evelyn admitted. "But I'm not what he needs long term." "Bring him in tomorrow," Nora said. "We'll talk. I'll meet him. No pressure." After the call, Evelyn sat for a long while by the kitchen window, watching the breeze ripple through the lavender stalks. She wondered what Blaze would think, whether he'd understand, whether he'd leave. That evening, the wolf came earlier than usual. The food was waiting, and for the first time, Evelyn remained nearby, sitting on the bottom porch step, her hands resting in her lap. Blaze paused at the edge of the garden. His ears flicked forward, then flattened. His body was still, but his eyes never left hers. "It's all right," Evelyn said quietly. "I'm not trying to tame you." Blaze moved closer. Not much, just enough. Then Cooper barked from inside, a sharp, playful sound, and Blaze retreated 3 paces in an instant. Evelyn turned. "It's just him. He misses you." But Blaze was already gone. That night, Cooper paced the kitchen restlessly. He sniffed the door, whined, returned to his blanket, then got up again. Finally, Evelyn opened the back door and let him sit on the porch. Under the stars, Cooper lay on the top step, head between his paws watching the hedge. Somewhere beyond unseen but present, Blaze watched back. The following morning, Evelyn carried Cooper, now stronger, but not fully recovered, to her old Volvo. He didn't struggle. He seemed to sense something changing. The ride to Second Chance Hollow took 20 minutes. Cooper lay still in the passenger seat, head turned toward the window. Evelyn glanced over now, and then fingers tightening on the steering wheel. Nora greeted them at the gate. She wore a navy vest, faded jeans, and thick gloves stained from a morning of work. Behind her, a pair of golden retrievers trotted along a fenced paddock. "Well, aren't you handsome?" she said, kneeling beside Cooper. Cooper wagged his tail, just once. Inside the office, Nora checked his paw, nodded approvingly, and asked all the right questions. "Does he spook easily?" "Only thunder." "Any food aggression?" "No, he shares." Evelyn paused, then added, "Especially with a wolf." Nora blinked. "Excuse me." Evelyn told her the story. From the clearing in Flathead, to Willa, to the first night in the garden. She didn't embellish. She didn't need to. Nora listened, then smiled softly. "I've heard stranger stories, but never better ones." Back at the house, the garden was quiet. No footprints, no empty bowl, just lavender swaying in the wind. It had rained the night before, not heavily, but just enough to darken the soil and leave the lavender soaked with dew. The clouds were beginning to lift, now soft and peach-hued at the edges. The garden looked freshly painted, brighter than usual, and Evelyn Whitmore stood at her back door, with her coat draped over one arm and a plate of biscuits cooling on the windowsill. 1 week had passed since Evelyn brought Cooper to Second Chance Hollow. In that time, the silence around her home had settled deeper, more familiar. Yet something inside her remained, suspended like a breath held too long. She heard the truck before she saw it. A gray Ford pickup rolled down the narrow lane and pulled to a gentle stop in front of the crooked mailbox. The engine shut off, and the door creaked open. A tall, lean man stepped out. His name was Liam Whitmore, Evelyn's grandson. Liam was in his early 30s, with sandy hair, a short beard, and a pair of square, work-worn hands that spoke of long days on his farm near Missoula. He wore a plaid flannel shirt and jeans smudged with dust. There was a calmness to his eyes, the kind found in men who'd learned to let the land set the rhythm of their days. Evelyn opened the gate just as he stepped through. She smiled, and they embraced without words. "I heard you've had quite the guest," Liam said, motioning toward the house. Evelyn led him inside where the scent of cinnamon lingered. She poured coffee into mugs, mismatched with age, and handed him one as they sat in the sunroom, light streaming across the carpet. She told him the full story, from the forest to the firelight, from Willa's arrival to Blaze's shadow. She spoke softly, never once romanticizing it, but her voice caught when she reached the part where Blaze stopped coming. Liam listened carefully, sipping, slowly nodding. "Sounds like Cooper was lucky," he said. "I think we all were," Evelyn replied. Liam set his mug down and leaned forward. "Grandma, I've been thinking. You remember the pasture by the sycamores I finished fencing it last spring? I've wanted a dog for years. Just never felt like the right time. But now," his words hung in the air, full of possibility. Evelyn's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the window latch. "You'd take him," with a full heart, Liam said. She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that carried both grief and grace. The next morning was clearer, colder. The smell of wet earth rose from the ground as Evelyn wrapped Cooper in a soft gray blanket. He was waiting by the door, tail wagging lightly, his eyes brighter, now more aware. He still limped slightly, but the strength in his gait had returned. Blaze had not been seen since the night Cooper left for the rescue, but Evelyn had left food out every night, and every morning the bowl was empty. Liam opened the tailgate and patted the inside of a dog crate lined with old flannel and straw. Cooper sniffed it once and stepped inside without protest. Just as Liam was about to lift the gate, Cooper's head snapped up. He looked past the porch, past the garden. to the trees. And there still watchful stood Blaze. He was thinner than before, his coat damp at the tips from the morning dew. But he looked stronger, too more alert. The scar above his eye caught the sunlight like a blade. Cooper let out a soft whine, not of fear but of recognition. Liam paused. "That's him, isn't it?" Evelyn didn't answer. She stepped forward slowly and placed a hand on Blaze's head gently, reverently. His body didn't flinch, but his eyes closed just briefly. "Thank you," she whispered. Blaze opened his eyes again and looked at Cooper. Then, as if understanding everything and expecting nothing, he turned. He walked past the lilacs beyond the old fence line and vanished into the woods. Liam drove away not long after his truck, kicking up soft dust on the road out of town. Cooper watched through the back window until the house disappeared behind the hills. Back in the garden, Evelyn sat alone. She didn't cry. Instead, she walked to the empty food bowl by the porch, washed it with warm water, and set it gently on the shelf near the birdseed. Then she turned toward the kitchen, where the lavender vase still held 2 wild daisies, Cooper's favorite spot to lie beside. Far away, deeper in Flathead Forest, Blaze padded along a trail he once avoided, the one that led to the high ridges above the valley. It was quieter here, cleaner. The air carried no trace of gasoline or human footsteps. He reached a clearing at the top of the ridge, a place where the sky cracked open wide and wild. Below, the valley stretched out in folds of green and gold. He lay down not out of weariness but choice. The forest had not changed, but he had. Sometimes kindness begins not with words, but with a quiet act. A wolf that should have walked away. A dog too broken to survive. And a woman who opened her door without asking for anything in return. This story reminds us that even the wildest hearts can choose compassion, that the bond between 2 creatures, whether born in the forest or forged in a kitchen warmed by lavender, can change everything. We don't always get to stay with those we save, but we carry their memory, and sometimes that's enough. In our daily lives, we cross paths with people who are lost, tired, or simply afraid. Maybe you're the one who needs someone to wait beside you. Or maybe you're the one strong enough to guide them home. If this story touched something in you, take a moment to share it with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment and tell us what family means to you. And if you believe healing is possible through loyalty, through love, through letting go, subscribe to our channel. There are more stories waiting to be told.